Welcome to the 40th IBIMA conference, 23-24 November 2022, Seville, Spain. My name is ALOUANI Ahmed from Tunisia. I am assistant professor at Gafsa University, Tunisia. The title of my article is Emerging Countries Talking on the World, the BRICS. The question is, what is the exact weight of the BRICS in the new world? This is the subject, the whole subject. It is divided into in four elements. The first one, the invasion by the BRICS of a new market and the challenge of competition. Two, are emerging countries vulnerable to crisis? Third, what are the risks for the BRICS? 4. Do the BRICS today represent an economic pool? Let's go to the introduction. Used for the first time in 1981 by the Dutch economist Antoine van Agmatel, the term emerging has since continued to evolve in step with new economic realities. However, due to the diversity of the criteria taken into account, no official list of emerging countries exists to date. The emergence of emerging countries on the world stage at the beginning of the 21st century poses new problems for advanced economies and industrial societies. First of all, to the population, they appear above all as carrying a threat to employment and the national standard of living, which can be called into question by the competition of a multitude that is still poor but already productive. 2. On companies, they require them to constantly rethink the organization of their production in response to the transformation of competition, to the effects induced on their traditional markets, but also to the growth of the potential markets they represent. Third, to governments, they show that the distribution of roles inherited from the Second World War is over and that we must now reckon with them in a world in the process of multipolarization. For in multinational bodies, United Nations, IMF, World Bank, climate negotiation, they upset agendas and exert pressure to impose a new distribution of decision-making powers. Now, the main criteria for designating emerging countries. We can say there are no standard criteria for qualifying an emerging country. Nevertheless, the points most used by the experts are the following. The first one, potential economic growth. It must be greater than 5% over the long term. Second, demography. The population must be young and educated and with a notable demographic growth. For some economists, having 100 million inhabitants is a minimum in order to constitute a significant domestic market. Third, a diversified economy. The economy should not be dependent on the export of raw materials, sectors such as industry and services are therefore developed. The last one, political stability. Political institutions must be stable to allow the implementation of long-term policies, construction of infrastructure, for example. Now let's go to the first element of our subject, the invasion of new markets and the challenges of competition. The BRICS have 3 billion inhabitants or 40% of the world's population, and they alone generate about a third of the world's GDP. From the 1980s, the acceleration of international trade, the information technology revolution, and the liberalization of capital movements offered development countries new opportunities to integrate into the world economy. Since the 2008 crisis, the growth gaps between the developed country and the BRICS have widened. Over the past 10 years, the production of the developed countries has increased by 13%, while that of the emerging countries has jumped by 73%. In 2012, the share of emerging countries in world GDP crossed the symbolic bar of 50%. However, production in emerging countries is carried out in part by large foreign companies, especially those from industrialized countries that come to set up there, but the production of the latter is not totally consumed by emerging countries. On the contrary, it will be largely sold in foreign markets. For example, the European Union was twice the sum of the BRICS plus Mexico and South Africa. Still, in terms of consumption, in 2008, Japan still represented the equivalent of 2 Chinas. Now the second element of our subject are emerging countries, BRICS, vulnerable to crisis. This element is subdivided in 4 elements. The first one, the 2008-2009 crisis. The bankruptcy investment bank Lehman Brothers in 2008, the global financial system found itself broken. Some establishments have been nationalized. Many have benefited from public loans. Despite everything, the international credit crisis caused the fall in trade, minus 11% worldwide, and investment minus 3.5% for domestic investment, minus 24.4% for FDE. Now the second element, a common crisis, different repercussions. Although the 2008 crisis is common, it led to different trajectories depending on the country. The crisis has slowed growth in India and China. It caused that of Brazil to stop and plunged South Africa into brief recession, or Russia has suffered from a real crisis. From 2007 to 2015, Russia's growth lagged compared to India, which was negligible. Between 2000 and 2007, it reached nearly 48%. With China, it amounts to 60%. Now the third one, effects of the subprime crisis on the BRICS. Now one of the BRICS countries was directly exposed to subprime financial derivatives. South Africa and Russia suffered the greatest impact. Brazil, India, and especially China, which control financial flows more at their borders and were less affected by these effects. The four elements fall in foreign direct investment. After an initial drop in 2008, global FDI fell by more than 20% in 2009. Since 2009, its recovery has been unstable, 11.9% in 2010, but minus 10.3% in 2012. While Brazil and China quickly returned to their pre-crisis levels, India and Russia experienced a fall similar to the global average, while South Africa, after the exceptionally high levels of 2008, suffered a brutal collapse in 2010. Now we go to the third element of this article, of this subject. What are the risks threatening the BRICS? First of all, sectoral misalignments and macroeconomic crisis. The dependence of the national economy on the outside market makes the growth of a country vulnerable to external shocks. A change in strategy of the multinationals, which result in drying up of coming FDI flows, can cause external imbalances that are quickly unsustainable. Deterioration of the financial count of the balance of payment, then a rise in interest rates, which leads to a downturn in the economy. Russia suffers from a dependence on raw materials, which limits its ability to develop diversified and competitive manufacturing industry. China fought off the global recession of 2009 by over-investing in infrastructure and real estate. Second element of this third element, corruption, social risks. In the International Corruption Perception Ranking of the NGO Transparency International, South Africa is ranked 67 out of 175 countries. Brazil 69, India 85, China 100, and Russia 136. Corruption has two main effects. On the economic level, it acts as a private tax on economic activities, creates additional inequalities between citizens, and distorts competition between companies. On the socio-political level, it undermines the credibility of official institutions and their legitimacy in the eyes of the population. Now the third one, degradation of the environment, the overexploitation of natural resources and its consequences. The rapid industrialization that characterizes economic emergence causes multiplied destructions of the natural environment both locally and globally. Economic activity itself generates pollution. Air pollution, for example, Delhi and Beijing are two cities where the level of nitrogen dioxide, carbon monoxide, sulfur dioxide, and nitrogen pollution are the highest in the world. Water pollution, soil pollution linked to water runoff. For example, intensive agriculture using chemical fertilizers in India, or hydrocarbon exploration, for example, deep water drilling off the coast of Brazil, line losses when transporting oil and natural gas to Russia. We go to the last element of this article. Do the BRICS today represent an economic pole? The summit in Fortaleza in Brazil in 2014, the BRICS decided to launch their own financial institutions. Two projects have been started. The New Development Bank, NDB, or BRICS Bank, a financial institution for the development of infrastructures, which must play a role similar to that of the World Bank in the financing of medium and long-term investment projects. Third, the contingent reserve arrangement. The third one, the contingent reserve arrangement, which, like the International Monetary Fund, is intended to combat temporary balance of payments difficulties. Its financial capacity, which can go up to $100 billion, will essentially consist of guarantees provided by the funding states. We can conclude by their place in the BRICS group, the major emerging countries intend to retain all their influence in the region. South Africa wishes to play a leading role in the stabilization and economic integration of Southern Africa. Russia relaunched the Eurasian Eurasian Economic Union project with a customs union in 2010, a common space in 2012, and an economic union in 2015, while extending the package to certain countries in Central Asia and the Caucasus. Mercosur remains a priority for Brazil, which continues to see itself as a guardian of South America interests. Since 2000, China has moved closer to ASEAN, Association of Southeast Asian Nations, and has developed its own regional integration projects in Central Asia. In June 2015, it launched the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, a competitor of the Japanese-controlled Asian Development Bank. India has been invited to become a founding member of this institution, endowed with a capital of $100 billion. Finally, you can conclusion. Finally, we can say that in the midst of economic difficulties, the BRICS have strengthened their consultation and cooperation. At the G20 summit in Brisbane, Australia in 2014, President Putin was under pressure from Western countries over Crimea. The BRICS have not followed the efforts of Western countries to isolate Russia. On the contrary, they insisted on the coordination characters of the macroeconomic policies of the G20 to promote the resumption of global economic growth. They did not want the G20 to deviate from its initial mission. In 2016, China is the host of the G20 and it will promote the global development agenda. In fact, the G20 was born in the aftermath of the international financial crisis. It was initially a crisis management mechanism, a kind of emergency management, but after these years of cooperative work, the BRICS intend to evolve the G20 from an emergency crisis management mechanism to a coordination and consultation mechanism for long-term planetary development. The G20 would be a necessary platform for BRICS countries to make their voice and position heard on global governance. One could therefore bet that in the not too distant future, the BRICS would remain a force not to be overlooked on the international scene. Thank you very much.